Welcome to Live from the Abyss. I am Daath Nihilus, and today's guest is Marco Visconti. If you don't know him, be prepared because this is a really awesome book. I just want to highlight this book right here, the Aleister Crowley Manual. It is a great primer for anyone who is interested in studying or learning about Thelema. It provides a lot of practical exercises for people to do while reading this book. And so with that said, let's bring Marco on.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. I was just telling people about your book and stuff.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction.
No problem. So what do you have currently going on?
So, right now, I just finished teaching a 6 months course on the Thought Tarot. The way I went about it is a little bit different than, whenever people, teach tarot, usually, they focus on teaching how to read the cards, right? But since I'm a Thelemite and since the Thought Tarot is such an important, a cornerstone part of, of what Thelema is really about, it contains pretty much all the secrets of Thelema in plain sight if you know where to look at it, or if somebody teaches you where to look at it. I decided to pretty much teach the magic of the Tarot, right? So a little bit of history on where the tarot comes from, where we think it comes from, what we think it represents, and then I went on to create 22 path workings where I could lead, the students each week into a major arcana via path working. So with pretty much a magical operation, right? And it's been an incredible experience for me as well. It was the first time I ever attempted something like on 6 months. It's a very long period. I don't think I will do it again because it's a very long commitment, right? And it's very difficult for people nowadays, now the lockdowns years are over, to commit for that long, every week, showing up every week. But it was very powerful, as I said, also for me, because you're there like 100%. You start, you have to finish, and you're really immersed into the whole history and all the magic of the tarot. What I was teaching is all things that people taught me and I studied over the years, but I realized that I discovered some new things as well myself. And now I have a completely different perspective on the Thought Tarot, which is something that, I've been using as my really only tool for divination and for introspection for 25 odd years now. So it's been a great experience. From this now, I'm starting writing pretty much my second book. I've seen that. Thank you for introducing the book. Like you said, it's a primer. It's something for those who never do not know anything about Thelema or Magick. So it was a book that I wrote with the intention of, okay, you can pick this up and you can, hit the ground running pretty much, like start doing the practices. And then at the end of it, you will have a good idea of what Thelema is about in practice, right? What I would like to do with the second book is go into the next step. And the next step really is, if you see at the Tunis new comment in the Book of the Law, Crowley literally says that the next step for humanity is achieving the knowledge and conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel. And that is the most important, I would say, initiation for every Thelemic magician, because I would say, in my experience, that's where the magic really starts. Everything you do before, it's laying the groundwork, learning the ropes, but then it's only when you have connection and knowledge and conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel, it's when you really start doing magic. And you start doing magic in order to leave magic behind. It's kind of a paradox, because that's also when you start going into mysticism, really, and preparing yourself for the mystical experience of crossing the abyss, which is, of course, the final initiation of Thelema. So my second book, I don't know where it's going to be out. I don't know where it's going to be out. I just started writing, right? And I'm very slow. It takes forever for me to put all the... Yeah, please.
Taking your time is not a bad thing.
No, I don't think so. I mean, at the same time, you know very well how prolific authors are, right? In order to stay relevant and to keep putting out content, which is a term I hate, but that's what it is, right? So at the same time, I think I hope I will be able to strike the correct balance from, putting all my ideas, which is, again, my experience with the Holy Guardian Angel, the paradox that, you know, I cannot teach you how to reach the Holy Guardian Angel, connection with the Holy Guardian Angel, but because everybody has to find it for themselves.
Right.
But there are pointers, there are practices that can be used to get closer to that experience, and those can be taught, right? So I want to put those onto the paper, and maybe I will bring also the experience of the Thought Tarot into the paper as well, right?
That would be kind
At
of
the same
like
time,
a great twofold. A great twofold is having both the HGA and also the tarot in the same book, kind of like one leading into the others, sort of like the HGA being like kind of like the final half of the book, you know.
yeah, I mean,
So yeah, I think it makes perfect sense.
you already got my idea pretty much. So, so I thank you because it means it makes sense.
Right.
Fantastic, your confirmation, fantastic. No, like I said, it's really something like that. Like it would be like the way I'm structuring right now, and it's like previews, right? Like really like starting to talk about the tarot, and then how the tarot prepares the groundwork, the alchemical groundwork for the experience of the Holy Guardian Angel, and then going into the AGA practices, right? I will test drive this a little bit in this upcoming course that I'm doing from October onwards, which is called the Holy Guardian Angel Experience. A complete new material, complete new lessons. They will be structured over 2 months, this one, and it will be a little bit of a test drive if these ideas can work. Usually they work, right? So we'll see.
Right.
We'll see how it is at the end of it. But like I say, this is what I'm up right now.
Awesome. Awesome. It sounds like you're really busy.
I try to be because, you know, before the pandemic, I had a I was leading a very different life. I had a different job. I was much more, you know, an outside kind of person. I mean, I live in London, right? And you know, in London, there's
Right.
a lot of like drinking culture, so it was always going out to clubs, pubs, and whatnot. The lockdown years changed me very drastically, and now I'm pretty much a hermit, right? I stay at home, I work from home, and I need to try and get busy as much as possible because you know you can get a little bit like stir crazy staying at home all the time.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Yeah.
That's the way I prefer it right now. To be fair.
Yeah, I know. With me, with the pandemic, I got a little agoraphobic
Hmm.
after they started letting all of the mandates and everything and the restrictions slide. So I still stay indoors a lot more than I used to. So I totally understand you on that.
It's,
I
you know,
wanted
for
to.
me it's so strange because before, I mean, in my previous life, which was up until, you know, from my 20s till my mid 30s, I was a musician. I was a DJ. I was a musician. I lived my life outside. I was living the nightlife. I was a a bit of a social butterfly, if you want. That has really changed, right? Like I get antsy if I stay out too much. Uh, I'm trying to, you know, force myself to try and change it a little bit, but at the same time, you know, from time to time, you just have to go with the flow and live the life you are living right now and making the best of it. Which is why I'm, you know, writing content, writing books, writing courses, being here on social media. I just today I did my first real TikTok. I don't understand how it works. It's kind of funny. I'm trying to, you know, like I'm trying to still disseminate the ideas of Thelema, and
Right.
you've seen it yourself. Like during the lockdown years, I mean, everybody was doing it, and now it feels like it's died down. Like it's you and very few others that still do it, which is kind of it's a bit sad to me. So I decided, no, you know, like we need to keep doing it. We need to keep trying to do
Yeah,
that,
for
right?
sure. For sure. Very much so. I do want to say one thing about your book is that reading it from cover to cover is great, but I feel that it should be stressed very much so that to get 100% out of this book, you really have to do the exercises
Yeah.
along with each of the chapters, and do them to the full extent that even beyond that, keep if you the way I look at it is if you need to revisit it, by all means, go back, revisit it, and just kind of like get to the point where you feel comfortable progressing as you go through the book. And I wanted to ask you now, is your new book going to be sort of like the same way?
Yes. There's something that I notice is that this format works very well, right? Maybe because, you know, attention spans have changed over the last few years. We all consume literature even in a different way than we did when I was, a teenager starting to read books, right? And I really don't believe anymore that if you put most people in front of the blue brick, right, Aleister Crowley, Liber ABA, most people will just not get it, right? Of course, Crowley is very cryptic, but also because the style, like these long chapters, they just don't work anymore. So even if my second book will be advanced content, intermediate to advanced content, right, compared to the absolute beginners as my first book, it will still be, a lot of pictures, a lot of diagrams. I have ideas for those, of course, and shorter chapters with exercises. To be fair, when I look at the book, the one that that put out already, they published already. If I could go back, I would actually add a final chapter stating what you said very clearly, right? Like in the sense that, yeah, you should read it, from start to finish, but at the same time, you should then go back to it and stick to, okay, let's say take 1 month for first chapter 1, take 1 month for chapter 2. When you get to the pentagrams, take 4 months maybe, right? Because you want to explore the 4 pentagrams in the elements as much as possible. This is, this was my first book. I didn't know how many things I should have put in, right? But now, of course, I have much more. My ideas are much clearer now, and so you can definitely expect that whenever this book will see the light of day, which I think that if everything goes according to plan, maybe the end of 2024, so a year and a half from now, but it will be much clearer, like much clearer.
All right. I mean, like when it comes to exploring the LBRP in your book, 4 months is definitely a great framework. As far as length, I really, from my experience with doing the LBRP and stuff, is that you have to learn how to master it effectively, and like you said in your book, you have to be comfortable enough in having a full knowledge of the elements that you are calling upon and stuff like that. And the same thing with the archangels and stuff. You have to know where you're coming from with the LBRP. It's not just mastering the ritual itself isn't enough. It's about embedding those elements and everything inside yourself and being knowledgeable about it to that extent where you feel the energy and the magic of the ritual just as much as you are doing like the coursing of everything. And does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. When we look at the source material, if you want, like Crowley insisted that if you were doing this right, if you vibrate divine word right, you would feel like covered in sweat and completely exhausted by that. And what he really means is exactly what you said here, right? That the first stage of learning every ceremonial ritual, every ritual, is to go by rota and learn like the muscle memory. You want to get that down first, right? But that's only like the performance part of it all. It's right. I would say it's important, of course, but that only allows you to then start concentrate on like, what am I really doing here? What am I calling? And then I would say that's pretty much like the intellectual level. But then a deeper level should come up. Instead of just intellectualizing what you're doing, right? With the body, we think like with earth, like the body, you get it done, muscle memory. Then you get to the air level, and you start to understand what you're doing. But then you have to go to the subtler realms, right? The water, the fire, what you're feeling, how this is energizing you, what it means, this practice to energize you, right? And 4 months really. It's maybe the bare minimum for this. In the course that gave birth to this book, and then the book fed back into the original course, which was what I call Magick Without Tears. I ran the first time over 3 months, and then the one I'm running now is over 4 months. And even that, I realize it's still barely touching the surface. And I tell my students directly, I say, remember, we're almost like speed run through this, right? Because your time is precious, and we live very busy lives. But in order to really experience everything, you maybe should stick with this material, this introductory material for 1 year, 2 years, because you mentioned the term mastering. It's true. I also think that then people get very hung up on the concept of mastering, in the sense that, oh, unless I've mastered this, I should never go further. I should never try something else. It's like striking that very unique balance of getting the muscle memory down, getting the intellectual level down, getting the subtle levels of understanding down, and then realizing when it's time to stay with it a little bit longer or moving on to something else, right? It's easier, I would say, in the AA, you have a tutor, like a superior, that tells you when you're ready, so when you pass the grade, right? And you think about it, like the AA has grades, in the sense you are graded, like, okay, you've done it, right? This is your grade, you've done this. Whenever you do it on your own, and I went on record multiple times to say that maybe we don't need orders anymore, because they always beget hierarchy, it's bad, nepotism is bad, etc. But when you do this on your own, it can be a little tricky. The good news is that we live in times where people can come on on social media and maybe hear from you, from me, from my multiple others, the pointer that they need to get this right.
For sure. And with the way I look at grades and stuff is, like, I see plenty of people within the Thelema community, most specifically like the Thelema Facebook group or the Thelema Reddit page. You occasionally have people come out of the woodwork. They're like, "Oh, I'm master of the temple and the AA, and so therefore you should listen to me, and I have all this clout and stuff." And it's just like, dude, nobody gives a fuck about your grades. I mean, in the long sense, the grades aren't for you to project onto other people. It's more for you to understand where you are on your own spiritual journey, and that's how I look at it.
Absolutely. I really don't engage on Thelemic social media anymore. I mean, because
Thank you.
I was very active years ago. I'm just not anymore. I think I stopped around 2019, something like that. Part of it was because there was all the biggest Thelemic forums on groups on Facebook or Reddit, right? They're all controlled by the OTO, so there's they will always silence dissent. And they went there first. That's it. They plant the flag first. It's so funny because you think about Thelemic Reddit, right? It's still moderated by EO131, who's not OTO anymore, but it still lets a lot of OTO friendly ideas to run rampant. And so I really don't engage with it anymore, because the reality there is that social media is a bit of a cesspit, right?
Yes.
Like I said before, you can find a lot of good, but you really have to learn the discernment of knowing where to find it. And I found out that in general, you're only going to lose time and sanity wading through the mud that you find on this forums. Because, like you said, there's people go there not so much anymore, because it used to be different, but I'm talking 15, 20 years ago. It used to be different, but people just go there to feel better about themselves, like to have a little bit of a spotlight where they can say whatever they want and they feel good about themselves, which is if therapy didn't cost this much, maybe we would have a lot less magicians, because these people would realize that they need to speak with a therapist. But the problem is therapy is very expensive. It's like super expensive here in the UK. I don't know how expensive it is in the US, without healthcare and everything. But that's why you end up with these people on Reddit.
Right. I wanted to touch base kind of on your courses, and I wanted to first talk about tarot and the Thoth tarot more specifically. In my studies of the tarot so far, I've basically learned the basics with the different elements associated with the suits, and kind of the symbology of the major arcana, the alchemical wedding, in the the Lover's card, and how that connects to all of the different cards, like how the in the Lover's card, the person presiding over the wedding is the Hermit, and so you have the Hermit card connected to that. And you see the Orphic egg throughout the major arcana. And correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, the Orphic egg is the fool or the magician, as they go through the major arcana, and they basically start as the fool, and as they progress through the different cards, they come out the other side as the universe. But at the same time, the cycle just repeats itself, and you go from fool to universe over and over again in a very cyclical way.
Absolutely. Absolutely, that's it. You can think of the Orphic egg as the universe in theory, the universe waiting to be born, but almost on the verge of being born. And the entire journey of the fool happens inside the Orphic egg, which is why you see the Orphic egg repeats on the the major arcana again and again and again. And it's only at the end, the Eye of Shiva, which is the same thing you find in the tower. So the Eye of Shiva opens, and that serpent, you can think of many reasons what the serpent can be. Is it Kundalini? Is it the seed that impregnates the egg? Many ideas, and that's the moment that the egg bursts forth. But as you said, that's not the end. It's only a new beginning, because it's almost like a spiral. Like it's the concept of pralaya in Buddhism, right? The idea that we go from one exhalation of the breath of Brahma to the other, and there's always this involution and evolution of experience, something that explodes into being and then retreats into non-being again and again and again and again. And that's exactly what you find in the symbology of the Thought Tarot. There's a lot encoded in that. I did go to quite a good degree of detail in my Thought Tarot Magic course, which, by the way, anybody can join right now, and they can do it at their own pace, right? It's something, the live cohort is over, but people can still join and go at their own pace, and don't wait for me every week, right? But instead, just deciding to rush as much as they want. I think you should still going week by week, but still. And the point is that, in going into a lot of detail onto this symbology, there's also some ideas on how to use magic to have this experience, how to internalize these cosmic experiences into your own embodied lived experience. Okay, there's a lot of sex magic in plain sight, right? How to do sex magic. Of course, you mentioned the Lover's card, and the Lover's card then becomes, the Lover's card is the beginning of the alchemical marriage, and then you find art, the old temperance, which is completion of but there's others, right? There is Hermit, and the Hermit is the seed, is Yod. So that's another idea there that can be understood. If you know where to look, there's pretty much all the degrees of OTO, which, by the way, I'll let you know, the degrees of OTO really tell the same story, but with Masonic symbology, or, Thelemic Masonic symbology, as opposed to Tarot symbology. And both of them tell you how to do these things, how to do this specific operation, which is an operation of creation. That's it, right? Like the OTO, the 9 degree of OTO teaches you how to, for two adepts and two initiates to come together and create a magical life, which can be the moonchild, the homunculus, or can be something that can live into a talisman. And the tarot tells you the same story, but on a cosmic level, and then you can internalize this concept into your own lived experience as an adept. For folks that want to have a little bit of insight, where should I find it? What should I read? A little bit of marketing here again. You can join my course, or you can find the hints in the Book of Lies. So, which is one of the most important texts in Thelema. It's almost like Book of Thought and Book of Lies go hand in hand. Of course, Book of Lies was written in 1913. Book of Thought comes at the end of Crowley's life. So you kind of get some very early ideas in Book of Lies, still very much shrouded in mysticism, in poetry, and then they are expounded in plain terms as much as Crowley used plain terms in Book of Thought. All of this, to fully get more understanding, you should always read the Book of the Law and the Holy Books of Thelema, which are the absolute fundamental text if you want to really understand what Thelema is about. I really I say all the time, right? Like, yeah, Crowley is interesting, but people spend so much time reading, the Equinox, or reading, the Confessions or the novels, which are great. Not all of them, but most are great. But what people should really read to understand Thelema is the Book of the Law, the Holy Books, Book of Lies, and Book of Thought. It's all there, right? With the exception of sorry.
I definitely want to I definitely want to say that the Book of Lies, I'd say among a lot of the book recommendations, are one of the most underrated of Crowley's writings, because there is so much as far as the mysticism and the depth. The Book of Lies is really just, you have to read it multiple times to grasp it. It's the same way with the Book of the Law. When it comes to book recommendations for beginners, when it comes to Crowley, the Book of the Law is not the first thing I tell people to read.
If you will get a lot of serious Thelemites giving you shit for that, because you have to give the Book of the Law. Yeah, I mean, and then that's how you never get people to come back, because they say, what am I reading here? What is this? Right?
They'll be out in their driveways burning their copies.
Exactly.
My recommendations for reading Crowley are Magick Without Tears, Essays Towards Truth, the eight lectures of yoga, and then like the very last book I would say in the top 5 are like Liber ABA.
Liber ABA. I would always suggest for folks to read, book 1 and book 2, maybe just book 1 to be fair, because when you get to book 3, Magick in Your Practice, it starts right with the introduction. It's magic is for all. Magic is going to be for all, for the pugilist, for the banker, for the housewife, for everybody. And then the next thing is on the Eucharist and the blood of the saints. And it's like, what? How did we get from here to there? Or all the mysteries of Babylon. And then the thing is that I think you've noticed that Crowley at the time was really trying to pretend he was different people. So, he was speaking as Perdurabo, but then he was speaking as Master Therion, because most people don't realize that at the time, if you were to join the AA at the time, you would not receive all the materials, right? You would be given like everything we have as a given right now, all the holy books, all the instructions. They were given staggered, and they were only for the AA initiates. Like one of the instructions towards the Holy Guardian Angel is Liber 7. But Liber 7 was a secret instruction. Now Liber 7, you find it on hermetic.com. And the point is that Crowley really thought of people would get to read Magick in Theory and Practice. Maybe they would be more into the material itself. Maybe they would understand what Freemasonry is. There's so much Masonic symbology littered across all of Thelema, and most people don't know what Freemasonry is anymore, right? It's not that popular anymore. It's still very popular, but it's not what it used to be. So a lot of the things you read in these books are lost in translation. And I'll tell you, it's the same thing for people who join the OTO. Still do. I don't know what people still join the OTO, because people need community apparently. But the point is, right, you get to the first degrees of OTO, especially I'm thinking when you get to third degree. I'm not going to spoil anything, right, because we're not going to do that. But I'll tell you, if you get into, even let's say you spend 3 years in the OTO, because that's what they're doing right now. Crowley really wanted people to go Minerval to third in one sitting. Now they split over 3 years because you get more money from subs for that. But let's say that you spend 3 years in the OTO and then you get to third degree. I tell you, if you don't understand Masonry, if you never read Freemasonry, you will not understand what the third degree is about, because it is a complete subversion of the Masonic myth, which it's so important in the third degree of Freemasonry. It's a lesson about death, right? Accepting death. But if you don't,
it's Hiram Abiff, correct?
So in the Masonic myth, and I can say this because it's published everywhere, right? I'm not going to go into details because I'm still a Freemason, and some things I'm not going to say, but it's mostly everybody knows, right? The third degree of Freemasonry, which is considered the sublime degree. There's no other degree. Everything that you get after it's appendix to it, that right? But basically, in the third degree of OTO, you learn about the death of Hiram Abiff. Hiram Abiff was one of the three chief architects of King Solomon Temple. King Solomon was the first, Hiram, king of Tyre, was the second, and then Hiram Abiff was pretty much like the genius architect between, and the other two were powerful kings, and of course King Solomon was a powerful magician as well. But the thing is that at some point, 15 fellowcrafts, 15 second-degree Masons, say, decide to steal the secrets. And at the last moment, all but three recant, and they say, no, we cannot do it. But three decide to go with it, and they pretty much try to steal the secret. And these secrets really are implied to be the secrets of creation, the secrets of communion with God, right? And the thing is that Hiram Abiff decided he would rather die than give the secrets to the profane, pretty much. And that's the story of the third degree of Freemasonry, right? And there's the moral lesson there is that we have to prepare for death while we are alive, because death will be coming. No matter, we are here to die, right? It's kind of like Lana Del Rey. We're born to die in a way. Yep. And that's it. This is something that seems silly to say, obvious, but if you think about it, it's quite a profound realization. Now, the point is that in late Victorian and Edwardian time, where Crowley was joined the OTO, then reformed the OTO, and when Freemasonry was so prevalent, a lot of ideas on death, a lot of this concept were kind of part of the Victorian and Edwardian society, right? And maybe as an extent of American society as well. This is all gone, right? People don't read the Bible anymore. People don't really think about death as much anymore. So again, without spoiling stuff, when you go to the third degree of OTO, it's really incredible how Crowley was able to Thelemize everything and change the idea of inevitability of death to make it a powerful and very empowering experience. And the problem is that if you don't know all the things around, if nobody teaches you this, it just passes you by. And I finished the Man of Earth in the OTO, so I've seen all the first 6 degrees, right? And 4 main degrees and 2 sub-degrees. And the thing is, once I've seen so many people over the year just like, oh, what was that? I didn't get it. Because Crowley was really thought that people would get it, right? So long story short, it's difficult to really suggest to newcomers what to read about Crowley. I think Magick Without Tears is the best thing to suggest, because he writes this at the end of his life as a series of letters to try and explain this concept to somebody who was never a Freemason, was a woman, so she could not even join Freemason. She was thinking about joining the co-masonry, right? The mixed masonry, but she didn't do at the time, and she was interested to join the OTO and the AA. And so Crowley, as an old man, exhibits actually a lot of patience trying to explain this concept as clear as possible. So I always suggest to go with that, or read my book, and then or read Lon Milo Ducat's book. Or read David Shoemaker's book. Like you've seen it in the book. I suggest this folks at the end of it, because I think they did a great job. When I studied these things first, Shoemaker was not around, so I started being initiated into the AA, and then start practicing magic late 90s, and only Ducat was around, and I read it, and it was great, right? Like it was called The Magic of Aleister Crowley at the time. It was fantastic. It was very clear. Then Shoemaker came around, and he added a lot of insight, especially with Soror Moral teachings, the idea of Kabbalistic psychology, which is not something that I particularly like, but it's very good to frame this concept because they're kind of a little bit more acceptable to the masses, to the uninitiated, if you want. So by all means, I would suggest read them and then read Crowley, because if you get hell bent on listening to the serious Thelemites on Reddit, no, you're shit if you don't read Crowley. You're gonna hate it, and I mean, maybe you'll get it, right? That's okay. But in my experience, a lot of people will hate it, and people would say, "Oh, Crowley makes no sense. This stuff is completely, bollocks," which is not. It's actually sublime because he was a genius, right? You've heard me
Oh,
saying
for
many
sure.
times. I think sorry, you were saying?
I said, oh, for sure. I mean, the more I've dived into Crowley and grasped the different studies, whether it be astrology and everything is like interconnected, whether it's that or Kabbalah or tarot, and seeing all of the correspondences that Crowley basically synergized
Yeah.
in his tome 777. I'm just like, yeah, the dude was a fucking genius. You know?
I mean, think about it. Like in his 20s, early 20s, he was like a chess champion. He was like, he was a mountaineer of good renown. I mean, he was a polymath. He was writing. He published 60 volumes of poetry. Some people would say it's great poetry. Some people would say it's terrible poetry. It doesn't matter. How many books have they published poetry, right? Like, think about that. So, of course, Crowley the man is problematic for all the reasons we know. He was a narcissist, he was a misogynist, he was racist. He also was not all of these things. He was very progressive for his ideas. He had progressive ideas, he has liberal ideas, and he had very, high Tory ideas. That was what his politics were like. But so the problem is that, like, I think we should, leave Crowley behind, and we should leave the Crowley worship behind, but we should not leave Crowley's genius behind,
Right.
because his stuff is great. But I don't think it's a first level stuff. Like, first level, 120 years almost has passed since the reception of the Book of the Law. Next year would be 120 years. So, it's quite an important number.
Wow.
It's a very Rosicrucian number. It's on, and we got other people that. Not me. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about Duquette. I'm talking about Shoemaker. I'm talking about Gerald Del Campo. Gerald Del Campo is a fantastic author that very few people know. They wrote great introductions, so enjoy them because
Right.
we got them, right?
Yeah, I haven't read Gerald DeCampo. I know I've seen his books, but I haven't actually read his stuff. I mean, as far as beginner books that I've read, I would probably say yours, then Lon-Milo Duquette's book, because I mean, yours is a really great primer, and it's a very good starting point. Duquette kind of adds his own flair to this stuff, and gets a little bit more intermediary with everything. And of course, I would, when your second book comes out, I'm definitely going to be like the first in line to get it. Just going to throw that out there.
I hope it won't be a disappointment.
Oh, considering I really liked this book, I highly doubt that your second book is going to be crossing my fingers, is going to be terrible. But like, and then I would say Living Thelema. My problem with Living Thelema for me was it was very psychological, because David Shoemaker comes from a psychology background.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was a little dense for my computer upstairs, but it was a good book, and it did provide kind of information. Though I will say that reading Phyllis Seckler's Psychology of the Tarot definitely opened up a lot more of that information that David Shoemaker talked about, and it made a lot more sense in that regard.
I agree, like Phyllis Seckler, if you, especially the ones you mentioned, it's really interesting if you want to go deep into Kabbalistic psychology, right? Which is the Hermetic Kabbalah, like this strange Frankenstein monster of Kabbalah that we Thelemites use. Like I said in my book, it's not Jewish Kabbalah. It's absolutely has nothing to do with it. It's a strange thing we use. It works, but maybe I don't know. Maybe it would be very good if at some point we would move away from that structure as well, which is difficult, right? Because it's so ingrained in the system. Crowley used it, but I don't know. Maybe it could be good to see if we one day can do without it. Because I tell you, a lot of my students really hated Liber 777, right? Really struggled with the idea of correspondences, which, when I start teaching these things online during the lockdowns, even earlier in the lockdowns when I was doing it at Treadwell's here in London, I was taking it for granted, because my experience before was only teaching to AA student, people in the AA that I was given to me as a students, right? And of course, it's a self-contained experience. If you get to the AA, you have read 777. You can do without, right? So I always took it for granted, and then I realized how much, normal people, sane people, don't like it, and don't like the idea of going back to the map of reality that is the tree of life, even if it works great, right? I also think that we have to be very honest with ourselves. And this is for everybody, like magicians, Thelemites, witches, everyone. We are not in a world that lends itself to tell big stories and take as they're the truth, right? Because think about it: the Golden Dawn, Crowley, the builders of the Addendum, so Paul Foster Case, everyone were telling them, their students, like, we have a secret divine knowledge, and this secret divine knowledge is perfectly encoded in the Kabbalah, in the Hermetic Kabbalah, in the Tree of Life, and in the Tarot. I was just discussing this morning, in fact, with Sam Robinson from pansoffers.com, right? That, they just like released a new material from higher teachings of the Golden Dawn. And I was like, and there's a different attribution of the Tarot there. And I was like, guys, let's be honest with ourselves. These systems works because they are internally coherent. Like they can be used by everybody to make a map of reality and try to map their experiences in a more or less structured way, right? But as every magician knows, the deeper you go, the more the structures dissipate, the more you have to learn to be in perfect balance with yourself. It is the magicians of the tarot. Like the magician of the tarot is also named the battleur, the juggler, right? Because it's really about juggling so many different experiences, so many different worldviews and vistas, and at some point, all these very strict structures fall apart. And we all know we cannot really sell it anymore as well, but this is the secret code of the universe, which is what all these teachers of old used to do. So maybe I would love to see before the end of my life. I don't know. I'm 45. Even if I live another 45 years, I'll be 9. I don't know if I'm going to see it, but I would love to see a Magick without all the structure, right? We'll see if we get there, though. It is the lesson. It is one of the very lessons of Thelema. The idea, the lessons of Babalon really is, Babalon is a very advanced concept, right? Like everybody speaks about Babalon. It's as advanced as it gets in Thelema. It's the Magister Temple level. It's the final initiation. There's nothing else after that. And Babalon teaches you to dissolve yourself, all of yourself, into the cup. So all your structures.
It's very much like Inanna's descent into the underworld.
Yeah, you're leaving the veils. You can see that, right? I don't particularly think there's a strict correlation between the two myths, in the sense that there is no myth of Babalon, right? No. Like we can pinpoint myths from our ancient history on the concept of Babalon, but Babalon really is a new idea. It's something that has birthed with the new Eon. Even seeing her as the holy harlot of Revelations, it's interesting because Revelation, it's the end of an era, is the dissolution of one era and the beginning of a new one. Right. And Revelation, Apocalypse, really means like reveal, like removing the veil, removing all the structures. So while I understand why so many see a correlation with Inanna, Ishtar, and the catabasis of Inanna in Babalon, I think that is also one of the veils that one day we'll have to get away with, right? I really think that Thelema, the final initiation of Thelema, it's complete annihilation. but not just like a nihilistic annihilation. It's
Right.
the dissolution of everything, and the reformation, maybe a very strange term that actually Crowley uses a lot, redintegration, which is a soul restoration into something completely new, something completely
It's
different, right? And we cannot even say what it is right now because we are even
I'm
in our flesh.
I'm imagining. I know this is a really might be a really bad analogy, but it's kind of reminds me of the transporter in Star Trek. You know, where kind of like going through the abyss, you disintegrate into a data stream, and then you come back. But when you come back into your reintegrated form, you are not the same person you were when you were on the other side. So it's kind of like it said, Nemo. You know, no man. You know, you
Yeah,
shed every ounce of yourself and reintegrate it into something completely different.
absolutely. And like I said, like everything we can say about it, it's not it. It's
Right.
just it's just our way of trying to, force concepts that are beyond language into
It,
language. But I think
it's like
that's
the Tao.
that's where we're going, right? And I think that Thelema allows for that to happen, and that's why it's magic. It's fun, and all the structures are fun, and all the maps of reality are fun. But you get to a point which is pretty much after having done it, and after having established those foundations, you got to get rid of them completely. But you
Yeah,
cannot do it right now because the other approach that I see a lot is like, well, I don't need anything. It's just chaos magic all the way. I just like do sigils, everything up. That's not it, really. It can be a way to convince yourself at first, but it's really not it.
yeah. In this last part of our interview, I wanted to touch on the HGA and kind of talk about those concepts. You mentioned earlier on a, excuse me, on something, I forget what it was, an interview or somewhere else, maybe on your page. You talked about um, how the HGA is seen differently depending on the system that you're working in, the worldview that you're working in. So, like, my question is, how is the HGA different in a Thelemic context versus a Golden Dawn context?
So the name AGA, like the name Holy Guardian Angel, stands directly from the Abramelin operation, the Grimoire of Abramelin, right? And that's where everybody got this idea. Everybody in the modern world, in contemporary world, got this idea. And of course, the Grimoire of Abramelin was a very important part of the curriculum of the original Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Mathers was the one who translated it, right? And Crowley, took the translation and ran with it. Now, the spirit that is called through the Abramelin operation, which is something I undertook, it's almost like a natal angel. Okay, it's an angelic being that is connected to your incarnation. Crowley took the name but nothing else from the concept, because and this happens a lot with Crowley. And again, this is absolutely crystal clear when you read the corpus at large, right? When you read Liber 65, which is the Holy Book of Thelema that expound the idea of the experience of the Holy Guardian Angel. And then again in Book of Lies, in multiple chapters of Book of Lies, it's absolutely crystal clear that the experience of the Holy Guardian Angel in Thelema for Crowley is one and the same with the experience that it's called samadhi in yoga. It's union with God. It's not so much as becoming God, because it's not so much as apotheosis. It's a complete union. It's something whereby you forge yourself as a vessel strong enough to receive the fire from heaven, to receive this influx of divine energy, and then becoming one with it, so that whatever happens after that union, you're not yourself anymore, and this divine essence It's not itself anymore. There's something else. There's a union. It's a new being once again. It's a being formed of this absolute union, right? So the difference, whenever you hear people speaking about Holy Guardian Angel online, you get people talking often about two completely different experiences. Like, because the natal angel, this solar natal angel that you find in the Abramelin operation, is a very specific kind of angelic being that comes to, you know, protect you, to empower you, but then gives you the one specific power. And that specific power is pretty much to call and submit the demons, like the spirit, the sublunar spirits, if you want to call it, the chthonic spirits, right? The experience of the Holy Guardian Angel in Thelema has nothing to do with that. Absolutely zero. Okay? It's about becoming one with the divine self. And by doing that, you really fulfill the promise of Liberesh. You really fulfill the promise of the union with the solar self. You become the sun of your own, like you know, every man and every woman is a star. You become that star, right? Because you are not just like a human being anymore, but you are a human being that burns inside, subtly, you know, subtle spheres inside, with that fire from heaven, with that specific energy. There are similarities with the two, because that sun energy, that solar divine energy, is the same thing that burns at the core of the natal angel of the Abramelin. But there's no exact union, like in the Abramelin and possibly in the Golden Dawn tradition. I'm not an initiate of the Golden Dawn, so I never went through that initiation. But what people tell me is that the experience there is that you get a spirit ally, a very powerful divine spirit ally. In Thelema, you become your own spirit ally, like you become one with that. So that's the difference, and it's kind of a like groundbreaking difference, right?
Yeah.
And only, you know, it's only when you get that you can understand what the star ruby is about, what the star sapphire are about. There's a lot of folks everywhere keep saying that, you know, the star ruby, Liber Reguli, these are all the Thelemic versions of the pentagram. They're not. They are meant to do something completely different. They're meant to almost like fuel that new starship that you created with the union of the angel through the abyss. It's those rituals can really be embodied only after the union with the Holy Guardian Angel. Of course, you can do them first,
Right.
and as everybody who's done them first, you will know that the Star Ruby is an incredibly powerful energy. The Liber Reguli is an incredibly powerful ritual. They give you a very fiery, both of them. The Star Sapphire, you cannot do it ritualistically. If you do it ritualistically, you're fooling yourself. It's a sex magic rite. That's it. It's union. It's 7 different sex acts done in 7 different steps. And you know what you read in the rubric is just like let's say a smoke's mirror, right? But whenever you do these rituals in a fully realized Thelemic environment with the union, while after you've achieved the union with the Holy Guardian Angel, then you have the tools to cross the abyss. That's what they're about, right? So very different, very different things, right? And again, this is what I'm hoping I'll be able to explain in this course. It starts in October, and then from there put it in the book. Like I said, like without in my traditional style, you know, without you know, no make allusions or anything. I'm just gonna tell you how it is, and that's it. So we'll see if people will like it or not.
Well, it has definitely been awesome talking with you. And as far as the HGA, I do have one other question. How does the HGA relate to the Greek concept of the Algoides?
That's a very similar concept. The Algoides or the Atman as well, you know, those are very similar concepts. This idea that you have something bigger than yourself that guides you and tells you where to go. It's almost like these ideas morphed over the years into something a little bit more separated from yourself, and that became, you know, the kind of solar angel you can call through the Abramelin operation. And then Crowley tried to bring them back to their original meaning, right? So the Algoides of Pythagorean tradition, the Atman, that's found in Buddhism. Those are very similar concepts. But remember, though, there's always an element of cultural lenses, and the translation is never one-to-one, right? Because they're
Right.
different systems, right? But the experience of the Atman, for instance, is the experience you have through samadhi. And the experience of the Holy Guardian Angel in Thelema is an experience of samadhi. Okay? So those are similar.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Let me check the time real quick. And it looks like our hour is up. I want to ask you again. I want to thank you for coming on here. It's been awesome having you and talking with you. And just want to ask you, what are your closing thoughts for the, you want to do any plugs or anything like that?
First and foremost, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a really good chat. It's so great that we still have this, we're still doing this, right? Like, no matter that the lockdown years are over, the general interest in Thelema kind of waned. There's been a lot of drama, as we all know, right? But it's good that there's still, these avenues are still there, because there's still people interested. I've seen that we had people listening to us. So hello, everybody who's listening to us on the line.
Hello, everyone.
So thank you for staying with us. Final thoughts. Just, everybody should follow Daath Nihilus, and everybody that's interested in what I do, you know where to find me. I'm very easily found online. My website is marcovisconti.org, and over there you'll find everything I do, like all the information for all the courses, for more information on my book, more information on other things I do. You go on marcovisconti.org and you'll find me. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. I want to do a brief plug and everything before we go. For starters, give Marco a follow. Check out his courses if you're interested, or at the very least, get this book. I will tag a link in it in the story to this lovely little discussion we had. And again, Marco, it has been awesome to have you on our show, and I look forward to talking with you again, man.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.